um, Ashtanga practitioner, and you're a teacher as well. And you're a mum, which is great too. So
Yeah.
yeah. So Kat, can you tell us about the first spiritual experience you remember having?
Yeah. So it's I guess it was my first experience with spirituality, let's put it that way, rather than my first spiritual experience. Um, my mom had me when she was really young, when she was 15. And so I ended up growing up with my grandfather, and him and my grandmother were split at this time. And so I would spend the summers at my grandmother's house. And was the most devout Catholic that you'd probably ever meet. So this was my first real experience with spirituality, was spending the summers there. And sometimes it meant going to like four church services a day, two in French and two in English. She just was probably obsessed if you looked at it that way. But th this devotion that she had to God and to the church and to everything, I guess it planted a seed in me really early on for my search. I left the Catholic Church long ago, but this was seeing her and how devoted she was to something that was like a higher power. Um, Really planted a seed, I think, for me early on. And I remember feeling this, we would pray the rosary every night and even like on these 3 hour drives to and from where I was living to her house, we would pray and pray and pray and you can feel something that's unexplainable during this time. And so I guess that this would have been my first experience with spirituality, or first spiritual experience, was the times that I spent with her. Oh,
The whole devotional aspect, because for a lot of people, Ashtanga is quite a devotional practice, isn't it?
it
So
is.
do you think
Yes, it
that sort
is.
of carried through? Is it the devotional side that appeals to you?
This side of it, yes, absolutely. Is um, I had gone on this search, with yoga once I started it, trying to find something, and nothing really spoke to me until I found Ashtanga. And I think that there's another dimension to it, another level of this devotional aspect. It's not just a physical practice. It doesn't have to be just a physical practice. I also have a competitive gymnastics background, so the discipline kind of also fed me there. So it was like an all-encompassing practice between the devotion and the discipline and the physicality of it. It was everything. It is everything for me. Yeah.
Why did you stop the competitive gymnastics?
Um, so my mom, like I said, she had me when she was really young, and then she remarried later on. And so when I was 13, she had my brother, and then when she was 14, she had my twin brother and sister. And so it became too much for them to transport me back and forth. And so I was getting to a level where I was advancing, and I would have had to start practicing more, but my parents couldn't commit to having me in the gym that often because of, obviously, I have one kid at home and I couldn't imagine having three tiny ones that's that young. So I went into competitive cheerleading after that, which took less time, and I was judging and coaching. But yeah, it wasn't out of my own decision to
Yeah.
leave it. Yeah.
So I can also see you have some nice pictures of Sharat and what looks like a primary series
It's
practice
the
group.
primary second series poster. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't see who's demoing it. Is that Sharat or someone else?
It's shot. Yeah.
Okay,
There's a few
so
pictures with Patabi Joyce in it as well. But yeah, this is my
oh, I know that
husband's.
one.
Yeah. He's been to Mysore more times than I have. And so, yeah.
Okay, so you did study in Mysore, and did you ever get authorized or certified or any of that?
No. So, my first year I went with Saraswati. I was working in sales at the time, and in sales you don't get much time off. And I was in between contracts, so I went for the 6 weeks. And Shrat wasn't teaching at the time, so I went with Saraswati, which I loved that experience in the old shala. The energy in that shala is incredible. And so, anyhow, I went on that trip. That was the trip that I found my dog, who's now on a walk right now, but Boo Boo, she's from Mysore. So I've had her now for 8 years, I guess. And then I came back and I realized that I wanted to make these yearly trips to Mysore, or at least that was my dream and my goal. And so I left my job in sales and I went back to school at like 33 to study marketing. And then, yeah, since then I've gone back two more times. But I was pregnant the time I went after that with Shirachi, and then we had our baby the second time, and he had just passed away right after it. So that's a very long story to say no, I'm not authorized, but it's due to the situations that went on
Yeah,
with
for
it.
sure. And like there are so many like great teachers who aren't authorized. It's not by
Yeah,
by any means it's not a kind of I mean it's cool, like respect for everyone who is, but at the same time it
yeah.
doesn't
It
mean that you
doesn't make
can't
you a
be a
great.
good teacher.
It doesn't necessarily make you a great teacher. It
Yeah,
can,
exactly.
but yeah.
Yeah. Like my teacher's not
It's
authorized.
something that I was searching. I wanted to have so that I could have the opportunity to offer for my students to be able to go because as you know it's like this trickling effect like you can only go if you study with an authorized teacher for 3 months. This was kind of the rule, and so I wanted to get authorized for that reason to be able to give my students the opportunity because it's something that I really love is going to Mysore um, and studying there. It was a really great uh, sort of like a pilgrimage, I guess could be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, India really gets under your skin. I never really was. I traveled a bit to India before I had kids, but now I've just started going a little bit more, just even if it's just for a week or two, because I'm not too far away, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
great. Like I love it. Like I'm not studying in Mysore. That wasn't really my path, but like I just love going. Like I was in Rishikesh. No, I'm going to Rishikesh soon, which I've never
Oh,
been to
cool.
before. Yeah, I'm going to see Krishna Das live. It's going to be amazing. So
That would be awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would be
yeah.
fun. Yeah. So, so what's your experience practicing in Mysore then? Like how has that influenced your understanding of the Ashtanga lineage?
Yeah. So when I went the first time actually was with Saraswati in that old chala, it was a wonderful experience. And actually, like I was expecting to practice primary the whole time because that's the kind of what you hear. And at that time, I was practicing up to my asana in second series. It was only about an hour, a year and a half into my practice journey, I guess. So I was pretty early on. And like the first week, she's like, "Okay, you do your whole practice. You do your whole practice." I was like, okay. So then I unexpectedly was able to do the whole thing, and that was fun. That was great. I really enjoyed that time. And then the next time I went back with Shraji, that at that time I was practicing fourth. I had started fourth. And at that time, I was actually brought right back to primary. So you do primary for the first month, and then after that, he gives you Pashasana, and then it's like a real slow roll. Like, you get to like Vrajasana if you get that's about as far as you get the first trip. And that was it is hard. Like it would be it's humbling. But yeah, to be brought right back to there, as much as you can prepare mentally for it, it still is it's there's a lot of crazy thoughts that go on in your head when this kind of a thing happens. And I've read blogs and I've spoken to people who were in a similar situation, and they reassured me that it's every like no matter how holy you think you are, like everybody goes into those dark places in their thoughts, like what is wrong? Like why am I being held here? Like can't he see that I'm. So that was my first trip. Sorry, so there was one extra trip because I did go before I was pregnant and I got to Lego. And then the second one I went when I was pregnant. And that one was a bit easier to manage because I was pregnant. And so everybody's getting new poses or they're frustrated about the poses that they aren't getting. And I'm just watching mine fall away. And like at that point, I was 30 something weeks pregnant and you know, it is what it is. I was there to experience it, to be in India during that time. I felt like it was a really great experience the second time. And maybe because my expectations were completely, I knew that no new poses were coming and that I was just there for the experience. And that made it a lot easier mentally, I guess. And then the third time we were there with our daughter, and that one was a difficult trip because that was, the month after he had passed away. And so the shala felt so each trip has been very, very different, I guess. But what keeps drawing me back isn't necessarily even practicing at the shala. It's like the experience of Mysore, being in that community of all these like-minded people who are all coming together for the same reason. And like, no matter where you go, you're seeing these ashtangis and it's like, it's a really great environment, I think, to be in as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned being held back. So you did your primary series, and then it gives you Pasasana, and then maybe you got a few other poses. I mean, this is something that people talk about a lot. Um, I haven't been able to understand how that is helpful for your physical practice or your spiritual practice. Apart from Ian Greisack, I don't know if you've read his
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah, we have his book.
Ah, dude,
We're
I want to
almost at
order
the
that
end
book.
of it. We have it right here.
Yeah, I want to order that book. I'm not going to get into what happened there. But anyway, the book seems good. But so he describes it as a kind of like coming up against something and forcing yourself to, meet your limits, whether they're mental or physical. But to me, that just seems a little bit like the whole idea of being forced to do something. It just seems a little bit like there's a certain violence there that might not be helpful. But it's not something that I ever experienced. So what am I missing?
Um, yeah, I've gone through that thought in my head when I was there, you know. I've gone through a lot of thoughts about it. And then I came out the other side, I think, I hope. Um, my practice got a lot stronger from that period. I'll say that. Because I think at all times, especially at that time in my practice, I was practicing at the shala every day and I was teaching as well. And so I was just wearing my body out. You know, I was practicing third plus half of fourth. And
This is in
sorry.
Canada, right, where you were based, right?
Yeah, in Toronto. I was there
Yeah.
with
So
David
you were
and Yana.
doing third and a bit of fourth and teaching, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
So
that's
like
a
my
lot.
body
Yeah.
was, it's asking a lot on your body. And I'm not young, like I'm 40 now, so I was, in my later 30s at that time as well. And yeah, so having that month of doing primary only, which I think is a good idea as practitioners. And I've spoken to fellow like quote unquote advanced practitioners, ones who've been practicing for a long time and have a more advanced like series practice. And they do periodically do a couple weeks to a month of primary series only throughout the year to kind of give their body this reset, which I think is good because you can't keep going at this level, you know? Injuries happen, all sorts of things happen. You're going to have to either you give yourself the dip or, your body's going to do it. My mom said this a lot. Like growing up, we would do, cleanses and different things throughout the year. And she's like, if you don't, your body will get sick, Like, so if you don't do this periodic cleansing or detoxification, and same thing with the practice, I think if you don't do a periodic slowing down. So this was an opportunity to do that, is how I looked at it, Like, so sure, I was trying to do my best version of all of the vinyasas. Like, can you please see me? I'm doing like, I can do more than this. And it doesn't matter. But I think that it's also a way to kind of contain how Ashtanga had grown because there's 400 people there, that he's got coming through. And so I think, in my mind anyway, it makes sense to have a period of time, the first month, to actually observe somebody's practice. It's not necessarily to be violent or to be, to say, no, you don't deserve blah, blah, blah. Like, I think it's really just an opportunity to observe because there's so many people practicing there. So he wants to be able to see, and also the problem is, although all the authorized teachers have learned from the same teacher, they've all learned slightly differently, or they're human and they've adapted it. So how they trickle the practice down to their students is different. And so some are more lenient than others. And so people show up who have been practicing with an authorized teacher, and their practice might not be up to his how he would teach it, let's say. And so he wants to observe, I think, for the first month and then slowly add. And I think the first year he's got this set endpoint that people get to, and then the second year it's usually Duipada or Kranavasana, and then from the third year onward, usually then we're in more of the typical Mysore style setting where people are going at the pace that their body and mind and nervous system is prepared for. But I think those first couple of years, it is a bit of an initiation period, I think, and also an opportunity for him to be able to fully observe somebody's practice. And I think also like because there are so many people, you don't want to have a bunch of people getting injured, going past where they should, and you just, how it was happening earlier on, as we heard from like when people were practicing with Patabi Joyce, and he's just forcing people into stuff. Is like it's not good for business either, in this day and age with the internet and everything else to have a bunch of people injured in Mysore. So I think it's better to hold people back for those couple years, and then so to me the system after I came out of it and like understood it a bit better and observed myself what was happening, then it made a bit more sense. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So it's basically about, his teaching method, given he's got to deal with so many students, he's got to see the students progress, and that's totally understandable. I hear the point about how it made your practice stronger, how it gave you that reset. Also being in Mysore was probably like really good for your practice as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's obviously like so much from observing Mysore as an outsider, it seems so much of it is to do with the gestalt of what happens there. It's like a whole thing, So
Yeah.
yeah, so I see your point there. Yeah. Um, you know, so as soon as you were sort of doing primary again for like a month or whatever it was, some people, some listeners have been asking about primary series and to talk a little bit about that. So, one of the things that I'm interested to know, um, yeah, so what effect did learning primary series have on you, do you think, when you were just first starting?
Yeah. So I guess I'll backtrack to the beginning of where I started yoga, which wasn't Ashtanga. So I started practicing in this hot yoga in Canada, which is called, it used to be Moksha Yoga, then it changed its name to Moto Yoga. Anyway, and I was encouraged to go there by my roommate. At the time, I was going to the gym like 2 hours, 3 hours a day, and I was working full time. I was still in school full time. I was just like running on full adrenaline, just. And she's like, maybe you want to try yoga. I was like, no, that's too boring. Like, I need to go, 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 go. So much pitta. And then, anyway, I finally decided, okay, I'll go. And so I went to this class with her, and I thought I was going to die in this room. Like, it was so hot. I'm like sweating into my eyes. They're doing Natarajasana. I'm like, what is happening? And then I'm laying down being like, why would anybody come back to this? Like why are these people paying to come here? And then I left and this feeling of like the breeze kind of like hit my face and I felt like my whole body got wrung out. And all like I had released so much stress that had been building up just in that one class. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. So then I kept going back on Fridays. They had this karma class and I would, come back. And then, so I guess that was kind of how it initiated me into yoga. And then I moved back home to Nova Scotia, where I'm from, and there was no classes there. So I found this like Kino video of the primary
Oh, is it
series.
the classic DVDs where she's got that kind
Yeah,
of like black outfit? Like that was
yeah,
that was literally how I got into
that
it. I
was
was
the
the
video.
same.
Yeah.
I was like in the middle of Wales, nowhere near anything, and I just downloaded her videos and it just worked. So like,
I think I put like hardest type of yoga into this like
really,
LimeWire or whatever it was at the time,
yeah, yeah, me
Napster
too.
or something, and I downloaded it.
Yeah, I just like the fact that Ashtanga sounded Indian. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, well, at
Yep.
least this is some kind of authenticity here. It's not just like happy yoga for Western people, So there's a depth there, and there is a depth to Kino's practice. She gets a lot of slack. Sorry, she gets a lot of flack, but it's
A
undeserved.
lot of
She's got a
flack, yeah.
very deep practice. Yeah.
If you listen to her speak like in podcasts and stuff, it's she has so much depth of knowledge. Like she deserves every bit of like fame that she has, for a reason, I do think. But yeah, so I got this DVD and I'm looking up about Ashtanga yoga and you're supposed to practice early in the morning before. So sure enough, I'm waking up, I'm going out, I'm practicing 5 o'clock in the morning every day to the same video. And I would stop at like Bujapidasana and just watch and be like, okay, this is crazy. Like this stuff is nuts. So I'm just gonna join back in at, Baddha Konasana. And so I left those parts out and I was kind of just doing it this way. Um and then I found this video online of I think what really sparked my interest in it was I found this video online too of David Swenson and like four others. I've never been able to find it since,
Oh
but
yeah,
they're
the
doing like
person
third series
removed
on
it.
the surfboards.
Yeah, the person removed it. I think it was Vile Yoga
Ah,
who put it up, which is odd. I know that's not vile as in bad, but that's the name on YouTube. She had it up and it's gone. But here's the thing, just in because that was the only video that showed the old Advanced A from the 1970s.
advanced series,
The
yeah.
only
Mhm.
one. But I actually demoed the old Advanced A, and to my knowledge, I have the only Advanced A video on YouTube.
Ah,
So I will put a
it's on
link to
YouTube.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I recorded it several years ago and it's not my best practice, but at least it's like something.
Yeah, it's something to
Yeah,
I'll look for it, yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Because
sorry, carry
I
on.
that was what I was like. I then became hooked because I was like, whoa, this practice is crazy. And like my, gymnastics background and everything, I was like, I want to learn this. And so yeah, I was blown away by this. And so I was like trying to find Ashtanga studios around. There was none where I lived. And then fast forward, I ended up taking a job out in Vancouver and I started Ashtanga out there. And so I had sort of taught myself primary series, I guess is the long story short. And then it kind of got refined when I was in Vancouver. And then I was there for 6 months and then I ended up moving to Toronto where I practiced with David. But yeah, so primary series, it was actually very difficult for me to learn. Like, although my body adapted to it quite quickly, like many postures were completely inaccessible to me. The twist, Marichasana D, Marichasana C, even Supta Karmasana, I wasn't able to bind until I was doing Dvipada, like pretty long into the second series. Yeah, like a lot of those postures were just not available to my body, definitely early on. And I had practiced other styles of yoga for probably 5 years prior to coming to Ashtanga. So it's no joke, you know. The primary series I don't think is it's not a beginner practice, but it's adaptable, and you do adapt to it pretty fairly quickly if you practice consistently, I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I had a similar experience where um, some of those primary poses, I had pretty much finished most of intermediate before I could really actually do them very well. I mean, the
Yeah.
hardest one for me was, oh, I'm blanking on the name, the wide-legged forward fold.
Upavishta Konasana,
Thank you, Upavishta Konasana. Um, Do you know what? I was
hamstrings.
only able to get my chest to the ground like probably 2 years ago after
Yeah.
after I finished third series. No,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
the
yeah.
only time that I was finally able to get my chest to the ground. So it's funny how
Nathan, I wasn't able to do a jump back until I was doing like almost all of third series. Like I couldn't clear the floor in a jump back,
but you're
And
you're
so
so
this,
strong. You look at the videos, you're like strong as
yeah,
hell. So what was that journey like for you?
it was
To
crazy.
do a jump
It was
back, a
six
drop back?
years.
Were you
What?
going to the gym or something, or did the strength just appear out of the ether?
Um, I think that a lot of it is comes from practicing gymnastics early on. So I have an understanding of body mechanics and how to like use counterweight. So a lot of the strength poses, as you know, especially like the arm balance and things like that, it's more about counterbalance. It's more about where your chest and your hips are balanced over your center of gravity than it is actually about brute strength. Like I've seen very strong men struggle in the arm balances because they're just trying to like grunt and push, and not all you have to do, but it's about balancing the hips over the shoulders. And then it becomes weightless. It's like in a headstand. If you're in a headstand like this, it feels very heavy. If you're stacked, it feels almost weightless. Same with shoulder stand and things like that. So a lot of the strength things that I'm able to do come from this balance and not so much actual grunt strength. I have very little bent arm strength. I'm not strong in that area. I can do handstand, straight arm, like this kind of balancing very well, but the bent arm stuff is very difficult for me. And so to answer your question early on, like I went through all sorts of crazy things in my head about like, I don't deserve to be doing this practice. I can't even do a jump back. Like, you have all this imposter syndrome you know, um, about what you should be able to do right now based on what's going on around you rather than just staying in your own lane and staring at your nose, as we should. Yeah.
So what was the turning point in your jump throughs and jump backs?
Um, One main one was I stopped drinking alcohol, I think. So at that time I had it was around COVID, 2020 in January, I stopped drinking. I didn't have like I would be, I guess, a very functioning alcoholic. I was drinking daily, but like in moderate amounts. Like I wasn't, but it was affecting my practice. I was smoking cigarettes and and still practicing third series. And at that point, I realized I can't keep going on this path. Like if I want to progress in my practice, I've got to let go of these two substances because they're competing. And so I let go of that Because during COVID, you kind of were in a bit of a jail cell inside of your apartment, like you weren't allowed to go out and like go out and see other people and all this stuff. So it was easier for me to separate myself from that. I didn't have to see friends that I would normally drink with and stuff like that. And so I kind of like went into this little monkhood inside of my apartment and went to sleep really early. And I started practicing. I switched my schedule around so that I was practicing on Sunday mornings so that I wasn't tempted to be drinking or anything on Saturday. I did all sorts of, psychological tricks to be able to do that. But anyway, after about a month or two, then I noticed um, my bandha or, pelvic floor, this action became a lot stronger. Like I was able to tap into an inner core that I wasn't able to before. It was blocked, I think. And so pressing to handstand, like a pike press, I wasn't able to do until then. A lot of things opened up once I cut substances out of my life. So I think that was a real turning point, 2020 in my
I mean,
practice.
that's super interesting because that points to the pranic element, doesn't it? Because I think in terms of biomechanics, I am not an expert on this, but I
Neither am I. I like,
imagine
yeah,
there's no reason in theory why you should get a bit stronger or a bit quote unquote weightless if you're drinking alcohol every day. Like maybe if you're smoking, you might not get the CO2 or whatever out of your body. But I mean, that clearly speaks to me as to the unseen element of Ashtanga, the idea that, these substances were like blocking you on some level. Do you see it that way? How do you sort of see the pranic
I
element
do.
going on here?
Yeah. And my husband and I talk about this quite often that like the longer you practice Ashtanga, like without realizing it, it will change your lifestyle. Like even if you don't consciously make these decisions, like you will most likely start going to bed a bit earlier, waking up earlier, choosing foods a little bit differently. And like, at this point, as I said in my practice, I was practicing pretty heavy practice, second and then third. I think my practice at that time was 3 hours or something. It was obnoxiously long. And I was so drained. There's no way that I could have continued on that path. And I'm thankful that I chose Ashtanga over that, that I decided that this was, the direction that I should go.
I mean, what's your understanding of Mula Bandha and Uddiyana Bandha?
Yeah. So I've read a lot about this, and I think um, I have a very basic understanding of it because I still, in my teaching, refer to it a lot as like pelvic floor lifting, but it's more than it's more than the physical body. It is like an energy lock. But it's hard to describe that, especially to newer practitioners. Um, and so, at least this action is something that's tangible that you can, um, pass on to students. Um, in my understanding, it's a lot to do with the timing of the breath as well, the timing the breath with the movement. And there's like a pause, that if you lift on that little point, then there's a lifting in the center of your body. And then this is where things that look impossible become possible is because you're able to tap into this inner core, which is a very difficult thing to describe or to understand. And like I said, I'm still a beginner in understanding this um, because I'm still, I understand the physical aspect of it, but the energy lock is still coming. I'm understanding this to be able to, I guess, describe it. I can feel it in my body, but I can't describe it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. How about this? Maybe it's a case of, if you're what this kind of idea of weightlessness and
Hmm.
being able to do things you thought were impossible, even if, and I'm not talking necessarily about poses, it can include that, but it can also be just breathing smoothly and beautifully in a hard pose, right? A lot, or it
Yeah.
could be the hard pose itself. There's lots of different elements of it. It seems to me that the bandha when you like hone in your attention on the bandha and what's actually happening in your core, the mind goes quiet in it and it goes into
Peace.
a meditative space, which is probably something a bit beyond a flow state, or maybe it's similar to like someone who's a great artist might go into a flow state and produce something beautiful. I think it's kind of tapping into the same kind of experience. And what's interesting is it's like it starts with the physical musculature, but then over time it becomes energetic. And when it
More
works,
subtle.
yeah, and when it works, you go into a kind of, for want of a better word, altered state of consciousness where the practice feels like it's just flying. And to me, that is where the physical practice becomes meditation. Does that make sense? Would you add anything to
Absolutely.
that?
I've only realized or discovered, I should say, recently, um, especially in the arm balance section of third series, that it's possible. And this has been after having a baby that I've realized this because it was like rebuilding the bandha and in this action. I mean, after I gave birth, it was crazy. Like I felt like I didn't even know my body anymore, you know? And so rebuilding it the second time has been really interesting. And I feel like, and I've heard this from other people, it's come back stronger. And I've recognized these new aspects of things that I didn't know before because I think I didn't know my body as well, and until after I gave birth. And so in the arm balances, it's possible to actually build energy in it rather than using energy in it. But as you said, you have to keep this soft, steady breath and really focus on the exhales. I tell this to students all the time, like a soft exhale, almost like a sigh with your mouth closed, is what I'm looking for. Because if you're in Astaphakrasana, for example, and you're like, like breathing so heavy, you're just wasting energy, and then you've got nothing to do the vinyasa out. But if you can sit there, as you said, with this like one pointed focus, your mind is almost in a meditative state, and you're just breathing softly, you can actually be not just conserving energy, but you can actually build energy throughout that posture to be able to, float out of it in a vinyasa, even though you're holding this for 5 breaths. But if you're in there being like 1, 2, 3, you're trying to just like count them and get them over with as quick as possible, that actually works against you. So the longer you can extend the exhale and even the breath, sometimes the longer you can stay in poses, the easier it is to build the energy to come out. But that's something that I've only learned, a decade into the practice after a baby is like that it is possible. Because before I'm just trying to like rush through as quick as I can, you know?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's what I think keeps people who do the practice for decades, that's what keeps us coming back is the
Mm.
internal experience, like I totally like what you said there, where the emphasizing on the exhale and calming that down, that's something I need to work on. So I'll definitely be taking that away. One thing that I've got a little bit obsessed about is I did a course with Shandor Remete, who insists on being called Sundernath. But I did his mudra course, and he's just banging on about the tongue the whole time. He's just like, you got to focus on your tongue.
Ah,
Your tongue has to be relaxed. Not only has to be relaxed, but it needs to be either behind the front teeth, in or like in Jiva Bandha, which is a
I
bit
was just
free.
about to say that in some postures, I noticed that, like Vricikasana, my tongue is against the front of my teeth. And if
Sure.
it's not, then the pose is not possible. Like it's a really strange thing. These little tiny,
It is
uh,
amazing if you can focus on what your tongue's doing. And there are these 2 points, like we're saying, like just in front of your teeth is good. But with the more meditative poses, putting it right where the hard palate meets the soft palate, where the tip
mhm.
is right there. But the thing is, the tongue has to be relaxed, and it's actually really hard to do because if you're going to put your tongue right there, if your tongue is tense, then it's not happening. So it has to be relaxed and there. And it does something to your brain because this is the whole thing with Khechari Mudra. Like I've never, been able to like fully
That's
do
when
that
you stick the
thing.
tongue backward or something, right?
Khechari Mudra is where you cut the frenulum
Oh, yes.
and you put it all the way up. I haven't done that. I would like to do it one day, but I've always chickened out whenever like once every year. I'm like, I'm going to do Khechari Mudra. I'm going to start stretching my tongue and stuff, and then I just give up after like a few days because it sucks. But anyway, but this is the thing. With yoga poses is you can get a sense of things energetically if you have good enough concentration and a little bit of imagination. You can There are some poses where you can put your tongue way back so that it goes into the space right at the back of your throat. And if you concentrate on that, it's like the energy just clicks into place and your mind goes blank. And you get a sense of what they might be talking about with Ketchi Mudra. I imagine with Ketchi
Yeah.
Mudra, it's like that, but like way better.
Even, yeah.
Yeah, but interesting about the tongue. You were saying like in Vrishchikasana, it just automatically goes to the front teeth and stuff.
I have my tongue goes to the front of my teeth.
Yeah.
And I always notice it when I'm coming out. I'm like, hmm. But I guess it's, as you said, there's something to that.
Yeah, I think what we're looking at here is these are just the infinite subtleties that you can do in a practice, whether you're like, looking at what your tongue's doing or looking at what your exhale's doing or looking at the quality of your breath. I mean, these are just how
Your eyes, the where your eyes move. I saw a while ago now a video with Laruga, and she had talked about in twists like uh you lift the chin up, which is something that I've taken into my own practice, and I've also I teach this way because I find that it really works. Is there's a difference between just turning your head in a twist and actually turning your head and lifting up, because then actually you open through the upper back, and it's the gaze also I think helps with twisting a
gaze
bit more
being to the
versus just
side
looking to
or
the side, but you chin up and you look up, and then that creates more space through here to twist a
so
bit
it's not just
deeper.
so it's not that, it's actually lifting up and like that.
Yeah, so I'm not to
Okay.
strain the neck, but I actually like I lift the chin up a bit in every twist. And I think she was showing it in Purnamati and it
Yeah.
changed that pose for me entirely. I was like,
Wow.
oh, like I can get so much more extension because you don't want to be like this in a twist, you've got to be
Yeah.
extended, lifting the chest up. And so, yeah, the way that the gaze is moving too. There's a anatomy teacher that was working with AYCT when I was there. She would come in the summers, Ariel. And she also talked about the gaze down toward the nose will lift your mula bandha. And it's like very interesting. Like if you look at the nose, you kind of feel, or for me, it's like a Kegel, this action, automatically happens. So like in upward facing dog, the gaze is toward the nose, not up, because then you're pulling up through your uh, pelvic floor, let's say.
Oh no, because like I was looking at the nose in Upward Facing Dog for a long time, but then it was Darby who said, no, 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 you have to, the gaze is up in Upward Facing Dog. So I've heard it both ways
Yeah.
because
So you've done it both.
Eddie Stern taught it at the nose because he's saying it counteracts the upwards it balances. Darby said to me, no, it has to be up.
But I think up always is difficult in a movement, in a vinyasa, because then you're going to dart your eyes, back and forth. If it's here, at least it's contained, I think, in my mind. Because when people look up, usually they're like, you can see the eyes move because they're seeing different things on the ceiling or whatever.
I
And
mean,
so,
I would be looking up between the eyebrows.
mhm.
Um, Yeah, but then what is definitely true is in downward facing, it's tempting not to like put your head in and look at your navel because it doesn't feel as nice, but it does activate the Uddiyana, like as Joyce taught it,
Yeah.
like the kind of mini Uddiyana. It just pops right in there and it's very cool. So
I've experimented with both. I know that you practice with Banchu at AYBKK too, and
no, no,
the
I haven't
gaze is
practiced with
different.
Manju.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Okay, so he teaches it differently, and I've experienced it both ways. But I see what you're saying, that when you really draw the chin down and you're gazing toward your navel, then yeah, it pulls up.
Yeah. Well, how does
He,
Manju teach it?
Banchu teaches it very, very
Oh, Bonshu,
differently.
sorry. I thought you said Manju. No, Bonshu.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I've
Banchu at
gone out there,
AYBKK.
but I never really was able to like learn in depth from him. So yeah, tell me how he teaches it.
I don't want to give away all of his secrets, but anyway, he teaches more about the gaze being a little bit more forward,
Ah, okay.
more between a little bit behind the hands, let's say.
Hmm, nice. Um, so just going back to your journey,
Mhm.
like how was the transition to intermediate? Like when did you decide that you wanted to go ahead and do intermediate, or you were studying with David Robson? Was that his decision? Like what was that like?
So I was in Vancouver actually, that chala. So as I said, I practiced kind of learning primary series on my own, and then I went to Vancouver. They cleaned up some things, and they assisted me into postures that I wasn't able to get into. And then it was dropbacks, which was oddly scary for me considering that I have like done a lot of, you know, backflips and things in my life. But I think just being out of it for so long and then trying to come back into that mental state of going backward and coming back up again. I had to retrain, and they actually, that old shala was funny because it's like in this kind of office building. And so there's like communal slippers at the front that you take to go to this bathroom. And anyway, so they took me outside to these like carpeted stairs to start working on dropbacks. And I'm like, what is this place? Like, what is this practice? And so they have me working there, and then they bring me back in again doing them. And and so once I was able to do dropbacks, then they moved me into second series, which I worked up until Kapatasana there. And then when I came to David's Shala in Toronto, yeah, he moved me pretty quickly from Capo. Mm.
Right. So it
Um,
was the teachers were basically telling you to sort of go ahead with that.
yeah, yeah, I've learned every pose up until where I am now from a teacher. I haven't taught myself anything. Like other than the primary series that I like early on kind of figured out. Otherwise, it was very traditional. I had to meet conditions of a posture before I moved on to the next one. And yeah, so I was stuck probably the longest at Krandavasana,
Oh, that sucks.
coming down.
I hate Karandavasana so much.
Yeah.
It's like the worst.
It took me almost a year to be able to come down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Coming back up
The
though?
falling, and I obsessed. I went crazy in my head on that one. I would come home and practice 60 times until my elbows bleed, like just
Oh,
go, go.
the classic.
Like
I love that. Yeah, I had like totally like
I
high
couldn't understand
elbows.
why I couldn't do it. I couldn't understand why I couldn't do
Can
it.
you come
And
back up
it
again?
grilled me so hard. Sorry?
Can you come back up again?
Now I can, yeah.
Wow.
On a good day.
I
But
like
I've had to
most
relearn
of the
it
time I
again after
can't come
break.
back up. Most of the time I can't come back up. I just yeah. There was a time I could do it, not anymore. I don't know why. Maybe you just have to practice intermediate a lot to keep it up. Who knows?
I've thought about before, now that I'm a home practitioner, swapping it for because I do practice third series now, not actually as much. Lately, I've practiced second series more, but usually I practice third series more than second. And so I've thought about swapping it for Urdhva Kukutasana because that one's kind of easy for me, Urdhva Kukutasana A. And so to give myself the challenge, I've thought about switching that one in there, put Krandavasana
Yeah, it makes
there.
sense. I mean, I just sort of like calm down as far as I can,
Yep.
knowing that I can still come back up again, which is about maybe 60%, and then I just come back
It's the
up.
same thing as Lego, like when you're learning Lego, or like maybe it was very easy for you, but for me, I was also there for I think 5 months falling on my head every single day.
Mm.
And I had to just kind of come down and hover where my legs are still engaged and then come back up again. And so it's the opposite of that in Krandavasana. I've got to come down and kind of like graze my triceps with my knees, but I can't let go. There was a time where I could, but right now I have to just like everything is still engaged. I haven't let go of a single thing. I'm like 1% of my body weight is on my triceps and then I lift back up again.
Mm.
And I think that you have to kind of work into this as part of the learning of it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you mentioned that you've had a baby. So um, what were the sort of biggest sort of surprises to you when you returned to your practice postpartum? Like, how was that journey for you?
Hmm. So yeah, I was 39, I guess, when I came back, so older. Um, and I would say I was surprised at how quickly things came back. I was also surprised at how quickly I was able to heal because again, being a bit older, I had a fairly uncomplicated pregnancy and no issues, and then same like a natural birth, uncomplicated. Um, and I remember like I'm reading all this stuff about, and I know we're not going to talk about pregnancy, but I just want to mention this. I was reading all this stuff about like breathing your baby out,
You can
like
talk
working
about
with the breath.
pregnancy. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm reading all that. My mom's like, yeah, yeah, you're gonna breathe the baby out of. And then sure enough, I did. Like they're telling me to push, and I'm like, I like my body wouldn't let me because I'm so used to the yoga breath, like exhaling through my nose. Like it was so hard for me to bear down and push that my labor was quite long, but I didn't tear or any like I didn't have any of these problems that often happen from labor, and I think that has to do with the yoga, like the breathing that I've learned over the last decade, and also like nervous system regulation as well. Like I was able to not go past where where I should, let's say. And so my labor was uncomplicated, delivery uncomplicated. And so when it came back, I think I was practicing like sun salutation 3 days after. Like I thought I was going to wait the 6 weeks and everything, but 3 days after, and it was really good to kind of just like move my body a little bit. And thankfully, my husband practices as well. So he was like, or he was practicing at that time. He's taking a break now, but so he understands the importance of me building back my practice and stuff. So he's been really um, great at helping out and encouraging me to continue to, take this time for myself, especially earlier on when you're in the throes of early parenthood, and just this. I have my baby attached to me all the time. So to have 15 minutes to do sun salutations and the last three, I remember this like almost euphoric feeling the first time I did like a forward fold or you know what I mean
Well, yeah,
after
because you've had
pregnancy
this
because
baby right there for like
you just have this
10
huge
months, right?
restriction in front of you and then to be
Yeah.
able to do even like uttanasana, like dway in the sunset it was like wow,
You get that
it
space
was
back, right?
space, yeah. And so um I think yeah, it all came back a lot quicker than I thought and I thought I'm going to release any expectations of like where my practice is going to go. Maybe I won't do past primary. But I had friends who have had kids and they assured me the whole time they're like, "No, no, your practice will come back. Your practice will come back." So you hope for that, but you also kind of in the back of your mind they're like, "Maybe I'm an anomaly. Maybe it's not going to come back. I don't know. Maybe I've torn some muscles and it's not going to come back, but it did." And so yeah, I guess that was the biggest surprise is how quickly everything came back. But I did have to rebuild everything. Like I had zero ability to do any sort of vinyasa, like the jump backs, jump throughs. Even I was like collapsing my feet on the ground, and that's something that I haven't done since early on in my practice. Like jump throughs came to me pretty easily, but that like to feel like this was the interesting thing is you have the memory of it in your mind, like you know how to do it. You know all of the coordinates to meet, but your body's just not following. And this was a very interesting and weird feeling for me. Is like I know how to do something, but my body just wasn't doing it initially. And but yeah, it's good because I think if you have a long-term practice before you're pregnant, it works out really well because you have these structures in place. Like I know how to build it back. But if I didn't have this long-term practice before, it would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, like I just wonder what I mean, this sort of brings up for me the idea of my practice, right? And like
Mhm.
I think like Eddie Stern when he sort of put out an article a while ago saying I'm stopping doing Ashtanga. And
Yeah.
it reminds me of that because he had this idea of like my practice, like one day I will get back to my practice.
My
And
practice, yeah.
this is something that we all have, right? Like, and this is something that I've been thinking about recently because I've been struggling to do my practice, right? Like my
Yeah,
practice
yeah.
is, it's quite an advanced one. And you know what? I was pushing myself to do it and I fell over and I could have really badly injured myself. Like basically, I was trying to do one of my nemesis poses, which is Uttana Shalabhasana. It's the one where you're in a
Oh,
handstand
yeah.
and you lower down, chin on the floor, your feet come over. And I literally fell forward and I smashed both my shins on this sideboard.
Oh,
Luckily, I didn't smash my knees. If I'd have smashed, and luckily I didn't break my neck. But you know what? It's just anyway. So since then, that was weeks ago. I just haven't been doing my full practice, and then I'm just like, oh, when will I get back to it? And Eddie Stern sort of made that point that like this is just an idea in our heads. There's no such thing as your practice. Every practice is different for a start. Every time you do
yeah.
your supposed practice, it's different. But at what point does this idea of my practice and wanting to get back to something you had, at what point does that become a blockage? Do you know what I mean? Like, been your thoughts on that?
So there's two things that I want to talk about that. So the one idea about my practice, I just want to quickly say that I think it's important. to recognize that it is your practice in some way, like the as a whole, whether it's primary, half primary, sunset, whatever it is, your practice. You have control over it. So if a teacher is telling you to do something that doesn't make sense, all of those things, like it is your practice. So you don't need to ask permission to do take breaks or to, I think that this is important to recognize that you are in control of your practice, number one. And then number two is, yeah, like having this idea of what your full practice is. And it's hard to let that go, I think. Like I still have that in my head. Like I know what my full practice is, and I know how often I'm able to do it right now. Um, but I think there's a level of acceptance that happens with that, realizing I was listening to one of your podcasts, another one recently, and she was talking a lot about the
Is that
season of
Susie
life that you're
Sweeney?
in.
Susie Sweeney, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
Was it
episode,
her?
isn't
No,
it?
no, no. It was the one that you recently,
Oh,
it
okay.
was one of the more recent ones.
Oh, well, never mind.
Landry, Amy Landry. She was talking about Ayurveda and stuff. And
Oh, Amy Landry. Yeah, 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 yeah. She's got a
yeah.
good
So
podcast.
she was talking about how she's adapted different aspects of her life and even her kids' lives and stuff like that, with the toys and everything. And but yeah, she was saying like to accept and recognize that this is the season of life that she's in. And I'm with her on that I feel like we did a trip to Mysore and then to Thailand last year. And in Thailand, I was able to do my full practice for a month because, we're on vacation and my husband has her for that entire time. And so I can go into a shala with other practitioners and just leave my mom life behind and just do my practice for however long it's going to take. But that's a luxury at this point, and it's not an everyday occurrence. And I've said this before on my Instagram channel, like prior to having a kid, I would get on my case. I'm so frustrated with myself about like it takes me so long to get onto my mat to do my practice and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is so hard to do all. If only I could go back to that, because actually that was quite easy. When I'm the only obstacle between me and getting on my mat, that was a really easy time in my practice journey. Like now I have all these other, not obstacles, but other responsibilities and things to take care of that I only have a small chunk of time where I can do whatever practice is allowed that day. And it's out of my control. And so this acceptance has also, I think, helped me mature in my practice. Because again, when I was a single person, living by myself with my dog and my cat, like, and I'm living 15-minute walk from the shala that I teach at. And, there's very little obstacles in the way of me practicing and doing a full practice. And so, but I don't think that you can grow in that space, uh, like fully in this practice. So having to adapt it to different seasons of life, I think is where you mature. If you always try and steamroll your way through doing your full practice every day and no matter what and blah 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 and refusing to accept that there's like changes and shifts in seasons and stuff and just trying to like force it into being, that you can't do that for very long. You will burn out.
Yeah, yeah. Like my teacher Mark, when I was studying with him, like I would come in and I'd be like, "What do I do? Should I do second series? Should I do third? Should I do fourth? What should I do?" He's just like, "Just do sun salutations and then see
Start, yeah,
see
just start.
what see what your body wants to do." Right? I think there's something to that. The sense of listening to your own body. I think is
If you grasp to that schedule too tightly, I think that it becomes a sort of a harm in some way. Like it's yeah, you can't continue this, I don't think. So I actually started, which I thought I was like so creative in doing this, and then I heard you talk about that this is how you do your practice is like I basically start on Monday with second series, some sort of second series, and then I go through the week. And yesterday I got to Supta Vrtajasana, and then I've got to make lunch for my baby, and I've got to like get all this other stuff. And so I got to Supta Vrtajasana, I did the back bends, the closing, and done. And then so today I'll pick up from there and continue on. I'll start from the twists probably, and then see if I can get to the end of second, and then keep carrying on. So I try and get to my full practice every week. I usually don't, but I only have about an hour and a half every day feasibly where I can practice when my baby's napping. That's it, unless I try and do it late at night when she's sleeping. but I also teach in the morning, so it's not really. So I have this like little chunk of time, and I try and I just pick up where I left off the day before. I'm not trying to get, because otherwise I'll do the same practice every day, and I do want the variety. I'm trying to maintain some sort of
But it's
aspect of my
unbalanced to do the same practice every day. Like this is where I strongly disagree with people who think it's okay for people to do primary for like months and months, maybe years.
years.
Because primary is a lot of arpanic poses. If things get extreme, then you can actually sort of give yourself a kind of depression in a way if you do too much arpanic stuff. You have to have that variety. And I think this is where I'm a little bit more sympathetic with the old school way of doing Ashtanga, which was, yeah, okay, Patabi just moved people through quickly, but at least then they were tooled, they were well tooled. It's like now, because it is balancing for the body to have primary, second, third series. They all, if you're doing all those and then you have the option to move between them and mix and match, then you have the opportunity to sort of balance your body. Sorry, I don't know how I even got onto this. I don't think it's even that relevant. But no, I get what you're saying. I'm glad that was helpful where, that way you're moving through in whatever sections
You're
you
just
think
trying
should
to, yeah,
be.
see how far you get through the week. But yeah, so then I'll pick up from third series the following day. Hopefully, maybe. Let's see. Sometimes, it's fundamentals, and then she wakes up, and I've got to I've got to carry
Yeah.
on. So
Yeah.
it's not just dependent on my body as well. And I've started um tracking my cycles in a more intelligent way, I think, since having her. And even before I had her, I was looking at it a little bit more just out of interest because I realized that, like, a few days before my period, I'm very flexible and like things like that. So I'm thinking, okay, there must be hormones at play here. And I want to like start to really pay a little bit more attention to it. And you start to see these cycles, and the more that you can understand them, the more you can be a little bit more, I guess, accepting and understanding of your body. Because I think men's cycles are on a more of a 24-hour cycle, but like women, because we shift throughout the month, it's easy to think, well, why can't I just do what I did yesterday? And like, and you get frustrated with yourself. It must be something I ate. It must be the way that I slept. It might be this, that. But really, truly, it could be out of your control entirely. And so, understanding how the hormones work, um, and accepting that can also help you to adjust your practice, I think, throughout the month, that you don't have to just keep following this rigid schedule. Um, just to check things off a box, oh, I practice,
Yeah, that's true. There's such
as
a
according to as I should, but actually like looking at your body as this organism that's, constantly shifting, and accepting that too, and not expecting it to be able to do what it did yesterday or so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Because really, a lot of what the practice is about is balancing your body, balancing the different pranas, balancing the left and right sides of your brain, the left and right sides of your energy body. Um, in traditional language, that's balancing your masculine and feminine energies. So
Yeah.
yeah, and think that those are always going to be out of whack for various. These things are completely influenced by the outside world and what you're going through as a person. You know, like so like I've been on this whole journey with my left side because I'm just constantly getting injured on my left side, and it was just getting
Yeah.
ridiculous. And so now, I'm doing some extra exercises on it, but I'm doing a lot more Chandra Bhedana in my pranayama. So instead of doing like a left and right side, I'm doing a lot more on the left, trying to, and I've noticed actually that has made me a little bit more in touch with my intuition, which was perhaps this steamrolling thing. I was a little bit too on the
Forcing
prana.
things into being.
Yeah. So I think like being in touch with the cycles, for women, I know the hormones change at different points in their cycles. Sometimes some weeks you're stronger, some weeks you're more flexible, some weeks you have energy, some weeks you want to
You're more
rest
focused,
more.
sometimes you have zero energy, like. And so um yeah, and previously, because I do come from this competitive, gymnastics background. I'm trained to just, you push through, you push through, you push through, you block out, and you just keep going. And that's how I address my practice for many years. But then, like I said, it does, it kind of like, it works against you at a certain point, Like, because then you do hit a wall, whatever that struggle pose is or whatever, and you just keep trying to force it into being and you get injured and everything else, like you said. So, um, I think as I've practiced longer, the more I've realized that a maintenance practice means more than, you know, checking off that you've done, primary, second, third, fourth, throughout the week. That just having some sort of practice that you can maintain with all of the other aspects of your life, and that you're willing to adapt it. That you're not just so headstrong. I think that it does eventually teach us this, that we have to be willing to adapt and able to adapt, or else people end up dropping off and going to something else because it's impossible. Well, I don't know if it's impossible, but for most of it, it's impossible to keep that level of
I think it
practice
is. I can't
constantly.
think of one Ashtanga personality teacher, someone I know over the age of 40 who doesn't adapt on some level. It's just,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just the
Who
way it,
has a long-term practice? Yeah,
yeah.
I think that you can do it for maybe 5, 6 years, and then and
Yeah, if you're in your 20s, maybe, that then why not? Actually, you mentioned you're 40. I'm also turned 40 this year, and I don't know, am I like, is this like a watershed point? Because, I would be talking, I don't know, I went to see the physio, and I was like, dude, I'm getting repetitive strain injuries. I've been doing these movements for 15 years. Now I'm getting repetitive strain injuries. She goes, yeah, you're getting older. And I'm like, no, surely, give me a
you
few
know.
years. Have you been noticing anything like that, like in terms of aging?
um, I know that I don't heal as quickly these days, but I also, because I'm a home practitioner, I feel as though I don't get injured as often as I did when I was practicing consistently at a shala. Um, I don't know what that means, but I don't. I got a cold recently from kindergarten because my daughter started going there, and we're doing this open kindergarten, so I'm there with her, just full of kids and germs and everything, and they're all putting everything in their mouths. So I normally don't get sick, but I had this cold, and it's been going on for like 2 weeks now. It just doesn't
Oh
go away,
yeah,
and I don't know if that's because I'm old or if it's just this like
you
kid
know the two
cold that's
week
really
cold.
potent.
That's a new thing for me as well. I'm like, why is this the 2 week cold is the
It just
thing?
won't, it won't leave my body. And so, yeah, I don't know if that's because I'm old or if it's just this really potent cold that happens with toddlers. I don't know, but she's fine. She's been fine. I'm just living with this cold forever. But yeah, so I think, yeah, there are things that happen as we get older. I think that we can um minimize it. So when I was going in the Vancouver shala, there's a guy that was practicing Derek, and he's been practicing for like 18 years, like long-term practitioner. And I really liked talking to him because it was early on in my practice career, and you're just like this little kid and you want to know everything about it, and you want to talk to these people who know. And so I remember him saying, because he was 55 at the time or something like that, and he was doing third series like no problem. Like he was just bam, 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 going through all the arm round balances. It was super impressive. And he said, as we age, like we start to hunch over, our hips get tight and stuff. And he's like, so that's the reason why it's important to do these things because if, I mean, eventually the leg will go, less far behind the head, as we get older. That's inevitable. But if we keep doing these postures to some degree, at least that regression will happen less or not to the degree that it does if you're always upright, If you're always upright, the only way to go is this way. But if you're doing back bends and if you're, doing these postures, then at least you'll stay upright for a little bit longer, and your hips, you're not as likely to break a hip if you're doing, maybe the leg doesn't go behind the head at all later on, but you're doing Janu Shasana or Baddha Konasana, some version of it. Like as long as we're doing these postures, then we're gonna minimize the effects of aging over time, I think is what he was saying. And I agree with that. I think that that's an important thing to recognize is like, even if your back bend's getting less and less deep as you get older, at least you're still going in this direction so that you're not going to be as most aging people are in this hunchback position.
Yeah, for sure. And just because you're older, that doesn't mean you can't advance your practice. I mean,
No.
Mark is, in sixth series. I did an interview with Susie Sweeney. She's, I think, in her 50s. She's doing sixth series.
Yeah.
I know some other people doing that. So it's by no means that just because you're getting older that these things are now off the table for you. It's just about working intelligently and staying in your limits and knowing how to proceed, I think.
And I think, yeah, as you get older too, early on in my practice career when I was younger, I was very interested in and impressed by very like dynamic movements. And as I get older and as I progress in my practice, I become more impressed with subtler move, like, the being able to be in an arm balance and just breathe, not the lifting up into every handstand and everything, but actually like these subtleties of noticing wise practices, and you start to get more interested in things flowing more than these big impressive movements, this like floating with ease kind of movements and way of being in the practice to me is much more impressive than big dynamic movements.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's just because I'm getting older or if it's just a deeper understanding of the practice or what, but
Yeah, it
yeah,
sounds
I'm
like a
definitely more
deeper,
impressed by flowing.
sounds like a deeper understanding. Um, so you at the beginning of the podcast, you said basically that Ashtanga is everything, which I took to mean it's like, like a physical exercisey thing, but also a spiritual practice and a meditation. Is that what you were talking about?
It's all yeah, it kind of checks all those boxes for spiritual practice that I've been searching for. But it also, yeah, it lends me this aspect of discipline, which um I I need, I think, in some way in my life is like I thrive on routines and I thrive on schedules and things like that. And so to have this sort of a set practice that also allows the opportunity for growth, not just on a physical level, but other levels as well, really speaks to me. And it's something that I feel can be a lifelong practice. As you said, going into your 50s and 60s is something that you can still do and still progress in physically, mentally, spiritually. You don't have to leave this to try something new. It's something that you can keep this thread throughout the rest of your life once you start it.
Yeah. So, I mean, was there a moment that you can think of where you were like, doing some Ashtanga practice or maybe an adjacent type practice where you felt like a shift in your consciousness or awareness and that like maybe had an impact on your life or something like that?
I don't know if I can think of an example. Um,
Yeah. Or what about the idea of Ishvara Pranidhana, like does that
hmm.
come into it at all?
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember a couple years into my practice journey, just saying to Yelena, like I think I messaged her, I was like, this practice isn't working. Like I'm so frustrated. I still feel anger, like all these emotions. And she was like, no, it's working. That means that the practice is working. And so I guess I had to kind of accept and trust that intuition. And it's true. Like so th- there is a shift that happens, and also this feeling of you think that this practice is going to lead you to enlightenment, or you have this idea to God or whatever, but it's really just kind of it opens up a lot of things for you, and then it just leaves them open, and so it's up to you to do something with that, to go deeper into the spirituality of it, to go deeper into, the non-physical sides of it, because otherwise all it does is break things open, it breaks you open
Breaks you open
and it
what
shows you these
physically,
sides of yourself that you'd rather
emotionally?
not see.
How you mean breaks you open what emotionally or bringing up like stuff that you've been
Yeah, like
keeping that kind of
these
thing?
emotions come up, the all of this feeling of lack of I'm not good enough. Like there's like all of these thoughts that come up and all of these um darker sides of your personality. You see how you give up. You see when you give up. You see all of these things, that if you're not doing something that forces you to see those, many people go about their lives, you know, blinded by it. They don't have to do things that they don't want to do. They don't have to do things that they're not good at. Ashtanga forces you that there's nobody in this world, I don't think, that this practice is designed for. That it's going to be like yep, my hips are open, my back is open, my nervous system is ready, my like all of these things. Every single person is gonna come up against themselves at some point in the practice. And how you react to that, it's gonna bring up those reactions, but then it's up to you to find out what to do with those reactions, how to work through that. Um, on not just a physical level.
Yeah, I mean that is like so much part of the spiritual journey is, you know, there's like self-improvement that people do where they are sort of, looking to improve themselves and stuff. But the thing about Ashtanga and these kind of practices is that they do sort of reveal your blind spots, right? And then it gives you a chance
Exactly.
to be like, oh, okay, so what are you going to do with that now? Like, are you gonna sort of work with that and maybe give compassion to yourself, like it's still a massive struggle for me to do moon sequence, Matthew Sweeney's moon sequence, which is the gentle, like yin style
I did
practice.
it a bit when I was pregnant, yeah.
Yeah, and like it's so good for me to do that, and it is always the last thing I want to do.
Yep.
And that's something that, but there's something nurturing there, for me, like
Yeah.
where I need that, and it balances me out. Is that sort of what you're speaking to?
It is absolutely is and on that note, like my husband Alex has started doing Vipassana, which I know that you do as well. And he's found it to be extremely helpful, very beneficial for him. And at this time in our lives, that's his main practice, because that's what really nurtures him and feeds him at this time, more than the Ashtanga practice right now. And really, truly, like this is something that would be really beneficial for me because of these sides that you're talking about that come up. Um, and so I try and do it once in a while. I try and do some meditations. I've tried the Vipassana, but yeah, like I don't last more than about 20 minutes, to be really, truly honest. But it's something that I know that I need to put more emphasis on in the next in the next decades that I need to really work on sitting
Well,
because
sure. I
that's not
mean,
easy for me. It never
you
has
don't
been.
have to sit though. Like, that's not
Yeah.
a, you don't, no one has to meditate, right? Like, I don't think it's a required thing. Um, you know,
But
so
I
if
think
it's
it's
not,
something that
yeah.
because it doesn't come easy to me, it's something that I can work on to see if it's something that could benefit me. Because I think that slowing down is something that's not easy for me, and just staying in one place in general. So I think um, I it's a challenge that I would benefit from, I do think.
Okay, yeah. Um, yeah, like I guess Vipassana is a sort of discussion for another time. I should probably do an episode on
Yeah,
it because
you should
there's a lot of
definitely.
different types of Vipassana. The Goenka one is the famous one.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of respect for the Goenka people. But it's not a practice that I could do right now, although I wouldn't mind trying it again. But the point, there's a little bit, it can get a little bit dogmatic and a little bit, and then you don't really need like two very dogmatic, so like Ashtanga and
Yeah, yeah, it's
Vipassana.
true.
It's just like do metta.
Just competing dogmas, yeah.
Yeah, I'm. That's what I'm actually. I think that's what I'm getting at here. Is metta, which is the practice of loving kindness,
Hmm.
is a really good balancing practice for Ashtangis. So if you're an Ashtanga practitioner and you're looking for a meditation, in general, obviously everyone's different, but metta, METTA, loving kindness meditation, like do that. That was just massive for me. Like, because it's the opposite of Ashtanga. It's completely non-achieving. It's completely
Yeah.
you are loved just as you are. No achievement necessary. The problem with Vipassana is it's a linear system like Ashtanga. So it's like
Right.
it's really bad. Like I actually, and the reason I'm talking about it because I got on this whole trip when I was like 27, 28, where I was all like, I need to complete the Vipassana thing. I need to get to this level. I need to do this. And I'm just like, no, no, like you need to chill out, man. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't advice for you. I'm just sort of putting it out there,
Yeah, yeah, no, I
trying to
understand.
contextualize it in case there's anyone out there who's looking for a meditation style and they don't know about metta. I would say just take a look at it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great advice.
Yeah, but look, this has been wonderful, Kat. Lovely to get to know you and find out about your practice. Is there anything, anywhere people can go to find out more about you, or get into contact or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a website, Kat Hache, Hache,
Well,
my
what's that?
maiden
Sorry.
last name. Kat Hache, Kat, my name, Hache.com.
Yeah,
And I run a little online program for home practitioners, mainly in Europe and Asia. I have students right now from I think like 16 or 17 different countries in Europe and Asia. And so, yeah, I teach in Central European time, traditional Ashtanga yoga there. And sometimes I run workshops as well. So, yeah.
fantastic. Well, yeah, Kat, thanks. We'll put that in the show notes. Yeah. So, Kat, thanks so much.
Thank you.